You have been told your entire life that getting rich is complicated, that it requires luck, connections, or extraordinary talent. That lie was never meant to empower you, it was meant to keep you obedient. What if wealth was not complex at all, but deliberately made to look unreachable so that you would never attempt to claim it? This is where the discomfort begins, because once you see this clearly, you cannot unsee it. Today, we are going to explore why getting rich is far simpler than you think, and why that simplicity terrifies most people more than poverty itself. Not because money is evil, but because clarity destroys excuses. Stay with me until the end, because there is a silent truth hidden behind ambition, effort, and fear that very few people are ready to face. If this resonates, write the phrase, "clarity over comfort," in the comments, subscribe, like this video, and listen carefully, because what follows is not motivational, it is revealing. Long before modern self-help diluted the meaning of success, thinkers understood wealth as a consequence of clarity, not chaos. In the political and psychological writings attributed to Machiavellian thought, money was never portrayed as a miracle, but as an outcome of structure, power dynamics, and emotional discipline. The idea was simple yet unsettling. Most people remain poor not because the system is too complex, but because their inner world is disordered. Over time, this knowledge was buried under moral guilt, romantic suffering, and the glorification of struggle. Society learned to praise effort without direction and sacrifice without strategy. In an era wounded by confusion, distraction, and emotional exhaustion, simplicity feels threatening. Clear rules expose personal responsibility, and responsibility, more than poverty, is what people have been trained to avoid. This is why the truth feels hidden, not because it is rare, but because it is uncomfortable. The first uncomfortable truth you must face is this: wealth is not created by intensity, but by precision. Most people exhaust themselves emotionally, mentally, and physically, yet move nowhere. They confuse movement with progress, effort with leverage, and suffering with virtue. You have been conditioned to believe that if something is simple, it must be superficial. But simplicity is not shallow. Simplicity is ruthless. It removes noise. It exposes what actually matters. Getting rich is simple because it revolves around a small number of principles that rarely change, but those principles demand something most people refuse to give: emotional control, delayed gratification, and strategic clarity. Look closely at how people fail. They do not fail because they lack information. You live in an age where knowledge is everywhere. They fail because their inner state is chaotic. They chase money with desperation, not direction. Desperation makes you reactive. Reactive people consume opportunities instead of building them. They jump from idea to idea, partner to partner, method to method, hoping that motion will save them from their own uncertainty. But wealth does not reward motion. It rewards positioning. Machiavellian thought, stripped of its caricature, teaches something profoundly practical. Outcomes favor those who understand human behavior, power structures, and timing. Money flows toward those who reduce friction, not those who multiply effort. This is why some people appear to do very little yet accumulate much, while others work endlessly and remain stuck. The difference is not morality, it is clarity. You must understand this tension. The mind seeks comfort, but wealth requires confrontation. Comfort keeps you busy with distractions that feel productive but produce nothing. Endless planning, endless learning, endless preparation. These are socially acceptable forms of avoidance. They allow you to feel superior without risking failure. True simplicity strips that away. It asks a brutal question: what single action, repeated consistently, moves resources toward you? Here is where most people look away. Because once the answer becomes clear, excuses die. You realize that your income is not a mystery. It is a reflection of how much value you concentrate, how clearly you communicate it, and how strategically you place it where demand already exists. Rich people do not invent desire, they identify it. They do not fight the world, they align with incentives that already shape it. Another hidden mechanism is this: emotional volatility is expensive. When your moods control your decisions, you sabotage compounding. Wealth grows through accumulation, and accumulation requires stability. Impulsive spending, impulsive decisions, impulsive partnerships all feel alive, but they leak power. The disciplined mind may feel boring, but it is lethal in the long term. This is why simplicity feels dull to the ego. There is no drama in consistency, no applause for restraint. Yet restraint is what allows capital, skills, and reputation to stack quietly over time. Notice how society romanticizes struggle but rarely teaches leverage. You are taught to work harder, not smarter. To hustle, not to position. To grind, not to observe. Machiavellian clarity would call this manipulation by distraction. When you are exhausted, you do not question the rules. When you are overwhelmed, you obey narratives handed to you. Complexity becomes a cage disguised as sophistication. The simplest rule of wealth is this: money follows value and value follows focus. Fragmented attention produces fragmented results. When you chase 10 paths, you master none. When you commit deeply to one domain, you begin to see patterns others miss. Patterns create advantage. Advantage creates income. Income, reinvested wisely, becomes wealth. This sequence is not glamorous, but it is brutally reliable. You may feel resistance as you hear this. That resistance is not intellectual, it is emotional. Simplicity threatens identity. If getting rich is simple, then your suffering loses its meaning. Your excuses lose their protection. Your self-image as a victim of complexity dissolves. This is why people unconsciously prefer complicated systems. Complexity allows you to blame something external. Simplicity turns the mirror inward. There is also a social cost to simplicity. When you stop complaining, you stop bonding through shared misery. When you focus quietly, you become harder to relate to. When your results speak, your words become unnecessary. Many people fear wealth not because of greed, but because it isolates them from familiar narratives. Poverty is communal. Wealth is solitary at first. Here is a question you must sit with. If you removed all noise, all opinions, all fantasies of overnight success, what would remain? Likely something small, repeatable, and uncomfortable, a skill to refine, a service to improve, a market to understand deeply instead of superficially. This is the core that builds everything else, not motivation, not inspiration, structure. The world does not reward intensity without direction, it rewards alignment. When your actions align with demand, when your behavior aligns with long-term outcomes, when your emotions align with discipline, wealth becomes a byproduct, not a chase. This is why those who obsess over money rarely keep it, while those who obsess over systems often accumulate it effortlessly. Do not rush past this part. The simplicity here is the trap. If you truly accept it, you will be forced to act differently, and action, unlike theory, exposes you. In the next part, we will go deeper into why modern illusions, ego traps, and false ambitions make this simplicity invisible, and how the desire to appear successful often destroys the possibility of becoming it. To understand why getting rich appears complex, you must confront a deeper illusion. Most people do not actually want wealth. They want the image of it. They want the relief, the recognition, the validation, the feeling of finally being seen. Money becomes a symbol, not a tool. And when money is treated as a symbol, the ego takes control. The ego does not seek results. It seeks reassurance. This is where everything breaks down. The ego wants speed because speed promises proof. It wants shortcuts because shortcuts protect identity. If success comes slowly, methodically, through boring repetition, then there is no dramatic story to tell, no heroic struggle, no external enemy to blame, only responsibility. And responsibility is terrifying when you have built your sense of self around potential instead of outcomes. Modern culture feeds this ego relentlessly. You are shown overnight success stories without context, passive income fantasies without foundations, and motivational slogans that replace strategy with emotion. These illusions are comforting because they allow you to feel close to wealth without doing the work that actually creates it. You feel informed, you feel inspired, but you remain unchanged. This is not accidental. An inspired but inactive population is easy to manage. Here is a paradox most people miss. The desire to look successful often destroys the conditions required to become successful. When you spend to signal status, you drain capital. When you talk instead of build, you leak focus. When you chase applause, you lose leverage. Wealth grows in silence because silence preserves energy. Noise dissipates it. Another trap is moral confusion. You have been taught subtly and persistently that wanting money makes you shallow, greedy, or spiritually empty. So you sabotage yourself just enough to stay morally comfortable. You work, but not strategically. You dream, but not concretely. You aim for enough, never for abundance. This inner conflict creates inconsistency, and inconsistency kills compounding. Machiavellian realism cuts through this fog. It does not ask whether wealth is good or bad. It asks whether it is useful. Money is power condensed into choice. Choice over time, choice of environment, choice of association, choice of risk. Those without money moralize it. Those with money instrumentalize it. One group debates, the other decides. There is also the illusion of fairness. Many people unconsciously wait for the world to reward them for effort, kindness, or patience. But the world does not reward effort. It rewards value delivered under constraints. This is painful to accept because it means your internal struggle is irrelevant unless it produces external impact. You are not paid for what you endure, you are paid for what you solve. Ego resists this because it removes emotional bargaining. You cannot negotiate with reality. You cannot ask the market to appreciate your intentions, you must adapt to its demands. This is why wealth favors those who observe more than they express, who test more than they declare, who adjust faster than they complain. Another hidden layer is identity addiction. Many people are addicted to being on the way rather than arriving. Being on the way feels noble. It keeps hope alive without risking disappointment. Arriving forces confrontation with a new question: now what? Wealth does not solve existential anxiety. It exposes it. This is why some people unconsciously avoid success. Their chaos gives them a reason to exist. You must also see how complexity flatters the intellect. Complicated systems make you feel smart. Simple systems make you feel exposed. If your wealth strategy can be explained clearly, it can also be judged clearly, and judgment threatens ego, so people add layers, jargon, and endless frameworks to protect themselves from scrutiny. They hide behind sophistication, but reality remains indifferent. The market responds to clarity. It responds to those who understand incentives, not those who argue with them. It responds to consistency, not intensity. It responds to long-term thinking, not emotional urgency. There is a reason why many wealthy individuals appear emotionally flat compared to the aspirational masses. Emotional flatness is not emptiness, it is stability. Stability allows rational decision-making under pressure. It allows patience during drawdowns. It allows silence when others panic. This emotional neutrality is often mistaken for lack of passion. In truth, it is controlled fire. Modern illusions also distort risk. You are taught to fear visible risks while ignoring invisible ones. Starting a business feels risky. Staying in a stagnant life feels safe. But stagnation compounds silently. Years lost to indecision are never recovered. The greatest risk is not action. It is drifting without strategy while time keeps moving. Another uncomfortable truth: wealth often requires disappointing people. Simplicity demands saying no. No to distractions. No to emotional obligations. No to environments that drain focus. No to conversations that reinforce victimhood. This creates friction, and friction triggers guilt. Guilt is one of the strongest anchors to mediocrity. You may notice that as soon as you simplify your goals, people around you become uncomfortable. They prefer you confused because confusion is predictable. Clarity is destabilizing. When you become clear, you stop playing familiar roles, you stop feeding certain dynamics, and that threatens social equilibrium. This is why many people self-sabotage right before progress accelerates. They pick fights, they change plans, they seek validation, anything to restore the old identity, anything to avoid crossing the invisible line where excuses stop working. The final illusion is this: people believe wealth will change who they are. In reality, it amplifies who they already are. If you are undisciplined, money will expose it. If you are anxious, money will magnify it. This makes wealth feel dangerous to those who have not mastered themselves, so they delay it, postpone it, or romanticize poverty as virtue. Simplicity demands self-mastery, not perfection. Control of attention, control of emotion, control of narrative. When these are in place, wealth becomes mechanical, predictable, almost boring. And that boredom is precisely what the ego cannot tolerate. In the next part, we will move away from theory and illusion and into action. Not motivation, but structure. Not dreams, but practices. Concrete steps that align your psychology with accumulation, your behavior with leverage, and your daily life with the kind of simplicity that quietly builds power over time. Now we leave theory and enter discipline, not motivation, not hype, but structure. The first practice is radical simplification of focus. You choose one primary wealth vehicle for the next long period of your life, not 3, not 5. 1. One skill, one business model, one market. This is not a limitation, it is a force multiplier. Every day you ask a single question: does what I am doing today increase my leverage in this direction, or does it merely keep me busy? If it keeps you busy, you cut it. Busyness is the most socially accepted form of self-sabotage. The second practice is emotional regulation as a financial discipline. You begin to treat your emotional state as an asset or a liability. When you are reactive, impatient, or seeking validation, you do not make financial decisions. You wait, you slow down, you detach. Wealth grows through compounding, and compounding requires stability. This means fewer emotional highs and fewer emotional crashes. You do not celebrate wins excessively, and you do not dramatize losses. You train yourself to respond, not react. This alone will separate you from the majority. The third practice is value concentration. You stop asking how to make money and start asking how to solve a specific painful problem better than others. Money is not attracted to effort, but to relief. The clearer the pain you address, the easier the transaction becomes. You study your chosen market not emotionally but coldly. What do people already pay for? Where are they dissatisfied? Where is friction tolerated because no better option exists? You position yourself there. You do not try to educate the market. You serve what already exists. The fourth practice is silent execution. You reduce how much you talk about your plans by at least half. Words create premature relief. They make you feel accomplished before results exist. You replace announcement with iteration. Build, test, adjust, repeat. Let results speak for you. Silence protects momentum. The more fragile your plan, the quieter you must be. The fifth practice is controlled consumption. You stop consuming information that does not directly improve your execution. Endless podcasts, endless videos, endless strategies create the illusion of progress while delaying action. You limit learning to what you can immediately apply. If you cannot apply it within a short window, you do not consume it. Knowledge without application feeds the ego, not the bank. The sixth practice is environment pruning. You examine who you spend time with and what emotional states they normalize. If your environment reinforces fear, complaint, or passivity, it will sabotage you regardless of your discipline. This does not mean cutting people off aggressively, it means reducing exposure. You spend more time alone if necessary. Wealth often requires a season of social withdrawal. Not isolation, but selectivity. The seventh practice is delayed reward training. You intentionally practice postponing pleasure. This is not asceticism, it is conditioning. You train yourself to choose long-term gain over short-term comfort in small daily ways. You do the uncomfortable task first. You invest before you spend. You build before you consume. Over time, this rewires your identity. You become someone who trusts the future more than the present impulse. The eighth practice is system thinking. You stop relying on motivation and start building routines that function even when you feel nothing. Fixed working hours, fixed review sessions, fixed metrics. You track what matters. Output, conversion, improvement, not feelings. Feelings fluctuate, systems endure. Wealth is the byproduct of systems that run quietly in the background. The ninth practice is strategic patience. You set realistic timelines and then commit to outlasting them. Most people quit not because something does not work, but because it does not work fast enough to soothe their anxiety. You accept that the early phase feels slow and unrewarding. You understand that visibility often comes after mastery, not before it. Patience is not passive, it is active endurance. The 10th practice is identity alignment. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to get rich and start acting as someone who manages resources responsibly. This shift is subtle but powerful. You ask different questions. You think in terms of allocation, return, and risk instead of hope and desperation. You become less emotional about money because you see it as a tool, not a verdict on your worth. You will face obstacles. Boredom will appear first, then doubt, then comparison, then guilt. When boredom appears, remind yourself that boredom is a sign of stability. When doubt appears, check data, not emotions. When comparison appears, return to your timeline. When guilt appears, remember that self-neglect helps no one. There will be moments where simplicity feels empty, where drama tempts you back, where confusion feels safer than clarity. This is normal. This is the threshold. Most people turn back here. You do not need to feel confident. You need to be consistent. Apply these practices quietly. Do not try to transform everything at once, one adjustment at a time, one system at a time. Over time, you will notice something unsettling. Money begins to follow you without obsession. Opportunities appear without force. Stability replaces anxiety. This is not magic. This is alignment. And once you experience this, you will understand why getting rich was never complex. It was simple, just not comforting. What you have seen is not a shortcut, and it was never meant to be comforting. Getting rich is simple because it strips life down to what truly matters: clarity, discipline, and responsibility. Complexity was never the barrier, confusion was. And confusion often feels safer than truth because it allows delay, excuses, and the illusion that one day something external will change everything for you. But wealth does not arrive as an event. It emerges as a consequence of alignment. Alignment between what you focus on, how you behave, and what the world actually rewards. You now understand that money is not chasing effort, morality, or intention. It follows value, stability, and positioning. It moves toward those who can remain calm when others panic, who can commit when others hesitate, who can repeat what works long after the excitement fades. This is why simplicity feels threatening. It leaves you with nowhere to hide, no one to blame, no myth to cling to. Only your choices, repeated every day. The most unsettling realization is this: if getting rich is simple, then staying poor is rarely an accident. It is often the result of emotional comfort, social conditioning, and the quiet refusal to let go of familiar identities. Poverty of money is often preceded by poverty of focus, and wealth begins the moment you decide to stop negotiating with reality. You do not need to become ruthless, arrogant, or detached from life. You need to become precise. You need to stop scattering your energy and start placing it deliberately. You need to stop waiting to feel ready and start acting as if consistency matters more than confidence. Over time, this changes not only your finances, but your relationship with yourself. You trust yourself more because your actions match your intentions. So here is the final question you must carry with you. If the path is simple, What are you still protecting by not walking it? Is it comfort, identity, approval, or fear disguised as wisdom? Sit with that question, let it disturb you, and if this message resonated, engage with it, explore it further, and stay on this path. Not because it promises ease, but because it demands truth.